Okay, a lot of you are looking forward to an update on the 38 convertible coupe. Of course, we're talking about Zephyrs here. So I'm going to get JB to give us an update, such as it is. It's summertime and progress is a little slower than it wants to be, but things are picking up, and we're going to give you an update now. So here we go.
We've been really concentrating on trying to finish the two cars that are near the end. We're very close on the 38. It's passed a number of inspections and tests related to drivability and usability and starting and running. There are a myriad of tests that we have to put these cars through. Because it takes so long to build them, you can actually have a problem that didn't show itself last year, but now it's back.
Right.
And so now you still have to fix it, because when the owner takes possession, it has to be in good working order. That's not to say that something's not going to go wrong. That's just silly. Things go wrong with cars all the time. But what we're trying to do is make it go wrong here at our place. And so Mark has been driving it around and around the neighborhood. Stop, start, start, stop. Testing brakes, testing suspension, trying to get things to quit going, clink in the night. And there's a lot of that that's just part of the amazing amount of things that we've done to that car to make it more drivable. We tried to preserve the look of it, because that would be a sacrilege to change that. But there were some drivability things we thought would really help. And so those are the things that we're testing. Integrating a modern transmission into an old speedometer is particularly difficult.
Okay.
So that'll have to be done electronically. Well, that electronics is complicated.
Yep.
And you have to take it out a number of times, test it on the freeway, try to get this and sync the two devices one to the other when they were never intended to go together.
Right.
So that's a big part. Well, that's winding down now. We finally got happy things going on, and now the body guys, however, have nothing to do with that. So that's why we've moved over to this 38 convertible coupe.
Before we move on to this car, while we're doing Zephyr updates, what about the 39 coupe?
The 39 is just waiting for the guys that are finishing the 38.
Okay.
And I spoke to that owner, and we have a couple of things going on with that car. The seat's out to be upholstered, and not a heck of a lot left to do on that car until we can actually drive it and make sure that, right back to the other car, we don't know what's going to happen until you drive them.
Yeah, okay.
We made some updates, carburetors, intake, refreshed the motor a tiny bit. So how does that play out in an actual working setting is what we have to determine.
Okay.
And so when we go out and drive it and drive it and drive it and make it do things sometimes that it's not supposed to do,
right,
then we got to bring it back in. But that process is coming up close to it. So that car is moving right along too.
Okay.
Just waiting to get number one car out the door so we can start.
Finish up number two.
Focus number two.
And then here's number three that your body guy is available for.
Right, and this is not about the first two, because this is all metal straightening. As we all know, we're not really much Bondo slingers here.
Right.
So we rather straighten the metal, get the things fitting properly, more or less like the factory did, understanding that these cars were not built by Lincoln or Ford. These were built by aftermarket companies, and they were being watched very closely by Edsel Ford, who was overlording. He actually picked these companies personally to do the modifications on the standard Lincolns to turn them into coupes and convertibles. Again, remember, most of those cars were in any factory were never built at the main factory. That was sublet out to smaller companies who are quite large, as it turns out, because they had a lot of cars to build for Chrysler and Ford and Chevrolet, and so they were cranking out a lot of cars, but they were the specialty cars, the coupes, the convertible coupes, the station wagons were especially troublesome. Woodies, yeah. That was when none of that stuff was built in with the rest of the cars. So
what is the? You were telling me earlier about how this car came to you as far as what you're working with. Yes. Before we get into the details of the metalwork, tell me how this car was found originally.
This car came from northern Arizona, and a Navajo buddy of mine offered it to me. Unwisely, I turned him down. Next thing we know, it's 25 years later. I'm over at a friend in California's. Shows up again since I started to get the message maybe I should be working on this car.
Oh yeah.
I bought it from him, and Paid a lot more.
Yeah.
But it did come home, and so as far as we know, this car really originated in Arizona, which is very unusual. I mean, this is a little tiny place in 1938. And
that's true.
I have an affection for 8s. I love 9s. I'm just, it's like your two daughters, and
yeah, they're two favorites.
Yeah, you don't tell me you don't have a favorite. If you tell me that, you're lying. But this is my favorite. I always wanted a convertible coupe. I missed one a couple years back. Never got over it. Now we're going to build ourselves one.
Okay, let's jump real quick to the difference between a convertible and a convertible coupe. What are you talking about?
The convertible coupes were coupes. Remember, sheet metal starts out generic.
Okay.
Coupe is a separate, standalone body style. Everything from the windshield back is strictly coupe and or convertible coupe. So, for instance, since they didn't have huge budgets and lots of time, they would take two-door sedans or two-door coupes and modify them and turn them into convertibles.
Gotcha.
So you had only two doors, only two doors in the Lincoln Zephyr line. You have the coupe and you have the two-door sedan.
Okay.
My suspicion is that all of them started out as two-door sedans and they were turned to either coupes or convertible coupes, because it would be fairly simple. We talked about this before. We could see the doors have actually been cut off by the factory
talk about that.
To modify them, because the folding top would impinge on that area, so they had to cut the top of the door off. This is strictly coupe. This back part of the car back to the bumper. So it's really all Zephyrs are the same, with the exception of this area and rearward.
Okay.
You got a coupe top, which is part of a two-door, but then it starts to change. So they had very low build numbers, so it made the tooling even more expensive because each car had to bear the cost.
Yeah.
So they were going to borrow and cheat and steal and grab stuff wherever they could, and especially with rarer cars like this.
Right.
And the guys were very talented. They could take something that was never intended for this car and put it on upside down with some blocks and some hammers, and all of a sudden it's right.
All right, so let's get an update on this car that your metal guy's been working on. What's he done in the last while?
Well, most of the work we've done is on the rear deck. What we're doing is we're stripping it with a grinder. We want to see if we got some really bad rot areas. We're not just concerned about things you can see after the car is built. This car almost certainly came from a very dry climate, because as you notice, all this lead work that was done at the factory, you can see how they cobbled the cars together.
Yeah.
There's a lot of cobbling going on there.
Yeah, right.
And that's not us, okay? That was
already there.
That was the aftermarket manufacturer that Lincoln hired.
Okay.
They did have the same problem. They had a few hundred coupes to build. You can't do that with $1 zillion worth of tooling. You have to make your own cars out of other cars.
Well, and to be fair, I mean, this is with the fender removed.
Yeah, it's removed,
so who's
gone.
going to see this anyway?
Nobody's going to see it, so nobody cared.
No.
This was going to get undercoated more than likely.
Right.
And you'd never see it again. But we can't deal with it like that. We can't just, grab 5 gallons of Bondo and do this.
Right.
Because I can't live like that.
Right.
I have a personal aversion to that sort of thing. So we strip it. We look for problems, rust areas, or mechanically problems that like splitting or cracking, or when you hit a car, all that force and all that kinetics is transferred into the inside of the car.
Yeah.
And you may repair the outer fender, but you haven't fixed the inside of the car.
Right.
And people all the time put a brand new fender on a bad body.
Yeah.
Can't see it. It's out of sight. You can't do that with these cars. They really require that you look deeper and take care of things that are a problem.
And obviously, if you're removing it, all the paint down to the metal, there's nothing to hide at that point. You're
nothing at all.
What's what.
Nothing at all. And it's also hindered because in the case of the other 38, we had to sandblast the entire car. Yeah. Because it did have surface rust. This car has virtually no rust whatsoever anywhere of any type. So it was easy to start with. And as you can see, the hood is being final fitted. Yeah. We got some fit up problems right in this area here. That's why he's been hammer and dollying that, and then he's got made up this curved line here, which is really complicated.
Interesting, yeah.
The real kicker in all this is the grill. If you don't have the grill when you do the body work,
Yeah, good luck.
you're bad place.
Yeah.
And we've done that in the early days. We would finish all the body work, it's perfect, put the grill on, it doesn't fit.
Right. So that's why he's got a good grill that he's using.
He's got the grill that's going to live on this car.
Okay.
And everything fits to it rather than the other way around.
I see. So that's why he's got some vice grips there.
Right.
He's got some.
Exactly. He's got to
some
get
shims
that
going
opening.
on.
That opening has to be fixed and brought out to the actual grill it's going to wear in real life.
Yep.
If you don't have a grill, you're not ready to start yet.
Yeah,
You got to go
okay.
get the grill. You got to plate it. Finding a good one now is almost impossible. So
Right.
we've been putting aside grills for years just because of that reason. So
I
we got a
see.
really nice one going here.
Yeah.
And we'll fit the body to that. And then everything flows together. This is just, everybody's going to look at this very closely. Mm-hmm. And if there's some problems, they're going to stick
Yeah,
out.
So he's obviously taking care of that.
Yep. You can see here he had to do some work. This was probably proud of this hood, or the hood was, there was not an alignment. Now he's brought it out and he's ground it.
Yeah.
And you can
see
see that he
looking
didn't-
down, like, wow, that lines up great.
Yeah, and he didn't use any Bondo. You can tell that.
Right.
That's one of his trademarks. Here's another place where we had a rust out on top.
Oh, I see.
And instead of bondoing over it, which most people would do, we had to cut it out,
Uh-huh.
weld it, dress it. That takes 5 times as long as just smearing
Sure.
Bondo on.
Yeah, it takes.
But that Bondo, in that instance, is probably going to come back to haunt you.
Yeah.
These are not, inexpensive cars, and they need to be treated that way. This panel has been replaced. You'll notice that he's located the gas filler in case we want to use a stock gas filler position.
I see.
All right,
That's what
that
is.
metal panel was either dented or busted or rusted.
Yeah.
So it had to go. So he made himself a new one, hammer welded it in. Hammer welding means you actually, while the metal is still hot, you put a dolly behind it and a hammer, and you actually flow the metal while it's red hot.
Really? Wow.
Okay, it's a very difficult technique. Most people are not going to do that. They're
Yeah.
just going to mud over it, and a few years later you're going to find out why.
And that's especially impressive to me just because, again, this is going to be undercoated and covered with a fender.
Exactly. No one's ever going to know it, but like the guy said, except the most important person, me.
Yeah, right. You're going to know.
You wake up in the middle of the night, with the shakes, thinking, "My God, why did I do that to that poor car?"
Yeah. Wow.
So you got to think about it that way.
Yep.
These are really pieces of art, and it's your job to make sure that they go back to what they were in the beginning.
Well, it's going to be
They don't
something.
need modification. They don't need anything. You just need to be left alone.
Right on.
That's our view. You can see the deck is actually in pretty good shape.
Yeah.
You can see this little crest right here.
Yeah.
That crest will carry through this deck lid. It's very subtle,
Uh-huh.
but you can see the metal is actually coming up with a slight peak,
Yep.
and that peak is carried through
Okay.
into the deck lid.
Gotcha.
Very, very subtle.
Great. Wow. Okay. Well,
Yep.
there's an update for those who are looking for it.
Yep.
And
Moving
anybody
right along.
interested, we're going to have a playlist for this car, and there's also playlists for the other cars
Yes.
that we're referencing here.
Yep.
All right. Thanks, JB.
You bet.